What's going on, everybody? Aidan from Birds vs. Boys here, coming to you on Jalen Hurts' big payday. We expected it. We didn't know when it would happen, but it finally came down to Jalen Hurts' extension to keep him with the Eagles. He gets 5 years, $255 million, $179 million of that guaranteed, and he becomes one of the highest paid players in NFL history, looking at around $51 million per year for Jalen Hurts. We'll go through a few things today and really what this means for the Eagles going forward, why they did it. We expected them to do it, but where it takes them from here and what it means for their relationship with Jalen Hurts. Now, first, the biggest thing, we already had him through 2023. So this is really 6 years, and you'll have Jalen Hurts through 2028 if you are an Eagles fan and the Eagles organization. And I think that's the biggest thing that matters with this contract is that the Eagles were looking for stability, and they have been doing so pretty much since the Donovan McNabb era and the early 2000s. McNabb was the quarterback for about a decade's worth of time, and since then, they've had multiple, you could even say, swings and misses. There were guys who we believed in and guys who produced at the quarterback position, but didn't do it over the necessary duration of time. So they brought in Kevin Kolb to be the heir apparent to Donovan McNabb, and that lasted about a half. And then Mike Vick stepped up, and it was the reincarnation of Mike Vick's career, and it was the rejuvenation, and he was awesome that season. But he quickly kind of declined. They gave him over $100 million contract, but that fizzled out, and Nick Foles took over. They didn't think Nick Foles could be the guy, ironically. We know where that led. It led to Sam Bradford. That lasted a year. That was never going to work. Nobody thought it would. That leads to Carson Wentz, who, again, like Vick, proved himself over a short duration, was an MVP candidate, and then got the big contract, and that fizzled out, leading to Jalen Hurts. This franchise has always been willing to do whatever it takes to get stability at the quarterback position, and they've got flares of it. There's been good seasons at the quarterback position. They've got good quarterback play for multiple guys, but they haven't had that franchise guy who, looking at Hurts now, will be your quarterback from the start of this decade in 2020 when he came in and took over for Wentz, and now through 2028 is when this contract extension would end. That is what they've been looking for since about 2009. About 14 years they've been looking for this Jalen Hurts thing. That is why he is getting the contract extension that he is. It is a team that values quarterback as much as anybody in the league, and they haven't had the necessary stability to really succeed, even though they've won a Super Bowl, they've won playoff games, but it's always just 1 year wonders. And they want a guy who's going to be good for 7, 8, 9 years down the road and have these long strings like Ben Roethlisberger's and the Tom Brady's, where it's like, you think of this team, you think of Jalen Hurts. And for Hurts himself, this is awesome. It's so well deserved. You can just tell because it's not only on the field, it's off the field, and those kind of overlap. You talked to Nick Sirianni earlier this offseason. What's Jalen Hurts doing? They never have to worry what he's doing off the field because the kid's working. He said he was in the lab. He said he was working like a maniac in the offseason after that loss because the loss stung him. I go back to that Chicago Bears game this year because that's the perfect crossover of on the field versus off the field, where it was so cold that day, terrible wind. It was just a brutal, kind of boring game where the offense couldn't get going. The game plan was a little stagnant. They were trying to throw into the wind. None of it really made sense. It was the game where Jalen Hurts actually hurts his shoulder. So you think about all that. All right, so you're playing not a good team. You're in the cold. You're kind of just sleepwalking through it, and your quarterback gets hurt. They won that day because Jalen Hurts was the best player on the field. He made the necessary throws with a hurt shoulder. You remember that play where the Red Sea spreads for Hurts and he runs it in. They just won that day because he was the best player on the field. And sometimes he can just do that and take over, and he has the leadership to be like, all right, we need to snap out of this. We need to get our shit together. And you can just tell everybody around him buys into him. It's what he says. It's what he does. It's how he plays. It's the trifecta. Like, you trust him in the locker room. You trust him on the field. And I just think you look around, the reception to this contract is not only the players on the team, and this is interesting because it's some of the players that aren't on the team. Like, perfect example, Budda Baker requested a trade last week. Then he's congratulating Jalen Hurts because it's the hard work paying off for Hurts. Devin White was another one who congratulated him. And I'm just bringing those guys up because they could be available. But I think it's just that reception of him or perception around him around the league where guys are like, this dude works hard. This dude would be a great teammate. A.J. Brown is here because he wanted to play with Jalen Hurts. And there you have that central force where it's like, all right, everybody in the locker room believes in him, but his play is why they believe in him. And I think from the Eagles' perspective, it's actually a good thing that Hurts wasn't a bona fide star coming out of college. So they get him in the second round. He's this project. You never knew if he was going to have the necessary arm capabilities to be a quarterback in the NFL. And because of that, you're almost more sure of your investment because it took him working and developing to get to this point where he is a bona fide superstar. Like up before this year, you had questions. If you're an NFL fan and if you're just even an Eagles fan, we wanted him to succeed because we knew who he was as a person and what his character was. But there were still questions about his arm talent and whether he would be able to sustain that over a 17-week season where it wasn't just using your legs and you had to make plays with your arms. Well, then he turns into the most accurate deep ball quarterback in the league this year and just takes this offense to a whole new level with A.J. Brown at his side. And it's like, all right, this isn't, you're not investing in the promise that he could become something. You've already watched it happen, right? Like the quarterback Jalen Hurts was in 2020 isn't the quarterback that Jalen Hurts is in 2023 because he's already improved so much. A lot of the talent and the raw talent was there. That arm talent, that arm accuracy, you weren't sure if it was, and now it is. So it just makes you more sure in the investment. Now, what does it mean for the team? This is the big thing to me because anytime you get a huge payday for somebody, my immediate thing is, okay, salary cap wise, how does this straddle us? How are we going to be handcuffed now so that we can't afford more players that I like? I have a lot of draft is coming up. There's a lot of guys that I'd like to sign long term. I'd like Jalen Carter at pick 10. I'd like him to be for 10 years here. I'd like to have a Dallas Goedert extension here in 2 years. His cap hit's going to be $12 million. Devontae Smith is going to need to get paid. A.J. Brown just got paid. So it's like all fun and games. You're like, yeah, he deserves it. But also I'd like to pay about 52 other guys that I like. And we just saw it this offseason. It's like, yeah, I really like Javon Hargrave. I couldn't give him $84 million. It's just one of those, I like C.J. Gardner-Johnson. Man, could I give him a multi-year extension? Do we have the money to do so? I think the Eagles did a good job of setting themselves up so that they have cap flexibility. So they, anytime you don't have a quarterback on a rookie deal, you're going to be handicapped in some sense, right? Like it's just how it is, to the point that I was listening to a podcast and they were saying, hey, maybe move on from Justin Fields for Anthony Richardson, because if they're anywhere remotely close, Justin Fields has to be way better because he's going to demand $45 million in 2 years, whereas Anthony Richardson you'd have for 5 years. So they can't be this close. There can't be a small gap. There has to be a wide gap in their talent. So we're talking about moving on from Justin Fields, who we're projecting to be like a top 10 quarterback in the NFL next year. And that's the crazy thing about it, is those rookie deals, anytime you come off of that as a quarterback, you're pretty much cash strapping your entire franchise. So that will happen, and this is happening to the Eagles right now. We saw it in free agency, but I think they did a good job of creating flexibility for themselves still. I know that he's going to have a $64 million cap hit, not this year, but the following year. And then the years forward, that is going to open up some space for them. And you look at the number now and you say to yourself, oh, wow, the Eagles paid a lot to have him. Go across the street to what they did with Bryce Harper and the Phillies. Did they pay him a lot at the time? Yes. Did they pay him a lot now? No. Now he's underpaid. He has already proven the worth of his contract and is now underpaid based on the contracts that came after him. You look at the NFL quarterback market, that's about to happen again. Justin Herbert's going to get an extension. Joe Burrow's going to get an extension. We don't know what's happening with Lamar, but it was rumored that he got a similar contract offer to what Hurts got. Those guys may surpass Jalen Hurts within maybe the coming weeks, not even years. So, yeah, it looks like a lot of money now, but this is just the way that it's shifting. And if we're talking about this not today in April of 2023, but maybe April of 2025, we're going to be saying, actually, this is fair market value for Hurts. So it looks like they paid a lot now, But they have paid a lot in 2025 and 2026? Probably not. That's just the way that the market is elevating so quickly in the NFL and really across sports as a whole as the contracts get bigger and bigger with TV revenue and things like that. So from that perspective, I'm like, yeah, you did a good job of getting this done before Burrow, before Herbert, before all these guys, so that you are overpaying now and not overpaying in the future. Like this, eventually this will come to fair market value for him. And that's a good job of reading the future and reading the room. And then I just think that thing where it's like, we've done a great job with guys of creating bonuses. And it's just the little game that Howie Roseman plays where it's like, oh, we converted all of this to bonus money. Now it doesn't commit against our cap. And they kind of did something similar. We're like, all right, we're going to put all this money into Hurts in 1 year, and then we're going to have more financial freedom in the years to come. And then you can play around with that and sign more guys. They have such a young core, and they have so much invested in this core that this is another step in keeping that all together. You remember Jalen Hurts is actually younger than the quarterback of the Georgia Bulldogs, Stetson Bennett, who will be drafted in about a few weeks here. Drafted, not in the league yet, still at Georgia technically. And you have all those guys around him in age that a contract like this and creating that financial flexibility allows to keep that window open, and then you're not strapped as much as you could be. So I just think that is the most important thing. If you're going to pay a quarterback, how do you do it so that you can invest in other positions and help this person, help Jalen Hurts? And I think they did a good job of being able to do that, where you've got Goddard locked in, you've got A.J. Brown locked in, you will have Devontae Smith locked in, and pretty much the rest of the offense as a whole is pretty much locked in here as well. The extensions have been getting out to Mulata, Josh Sweat, Dallas Goedert last year, Avonte Maddox. A lot of these guys are taken care of, and they just brought back Bradbury, Darius Slay, some of those older guys. So your core is all taken care of, and we'll see what they do in the years to come. Another part of this is you have to draft well. You have to bring guys in who can produce and don't cost a lot of money to do so. We talked about on one of our previous shows. Yeah, the Bears signed TJ Edwards. Your job isn't to sign TJ Edwards. Your job is to find the next TJ Edwards. He was an undrafted guy who ended up leading your team in tackles. If you're going to give $51 million per average to your quarterback, you got to find guys like that who can contribute to your team. The Eagles are in a great position where they have 2 first-round picks, a second-round pick, and then next year they have a first-round pick and 2 second-round picks. They've got 6 premium picks, premium being first or second round. So they have 6 chances to hit on a superstar guy or at least a valuable starter guy in the next 2 drafts. And they cost less than going out and getting somebody in free agency. You lost Javon Hargrave. Fine. Okay, so Jordan Davis is who you invested in last year. He should be turning into something. Okay, you lost TJ Edwards. You drafted Nakobe Dean in the 3rd round. He should be turning into something. Drafting well now becomes imperative. You're almost following the Chiefs model where you look at everything they did. Yes, they were cash strapped. They had to give up on Tyreek Hill. They gave Patrick Mahomes $500 million, and you say to yourself, oh my goodness, oh my word, $500 million, $500 million for one guy. How do you survive with that? Okay, now that contract doesn't look absurd anymore. He's actually going to, per average, be the 10th highest paid quarterback in the league. Similar goal to what the Eagles are doing. It looks absurd at the beginning. It probably won't in 3 years. They drafted well. Think about all the people who contributed in the Super Bowl for them. And, you know, it's like the typical guys like Travis Kelce and stuff like that. But Isaiah Pacheco, a 7th-round running back from Rutgers, was your leading rusher in the game. Guys like that, your entire secondary, both corners were rookies. They did their job well enough to win the game. They drafted well. They invested in their quarterback, and they didn't invest so much that they are too strapped to invest elsewhere. That is exactly what the Eagles are doing, or at least trying to do, but it does make the draft all more imperative. Coming up here in 2 weeks, who knows who they land, but these drafts become more and more important to build around a guy who costs as much as Hurts. But so far, so good. You look at the guys that they have drafted recently: Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert, Landon Dickerson, Jordan Mailata. They've really built around Hurts really well, and then had the ammo to go out and trade for a guy like A.J. Brown. And that's all you can ask for is to invest in those weapons around Hurts so that he can thrive and survive in this league and do so through 2028. So big day for the Eagles. I think everybody's happy with this. Like I said at the beginning, stability. I think if you look at one word and if you could use one synonym or just something to give to Jalen Hurts, it would probably be stability. He brings stability and a calmness and a coolness to your team that you cannot match. Leader on and off the field. Everything he does, you never really have to worry about him. Strong mentally, strong physically. He is going to be the future face of not only the Eagles, but probably in the city. And this is a city that has 2 other MVPs in it. And it's probably going to be Hurts who's the face of the city. So good for him. Good for the Eagles. Makes the drafts more interesting. Makes off seasons more interesting because you always have this big contract now, but you have all these other things that you have to invest in to make him succeed. But the window is open. And that's the biggest thing. We went to a Super Bowl and we came this close. Let's get back. Let's do it with Jalen Hurts. Let's build around him. And that's what the Eagles were able to do today. This is the first step to keeping the window open as long as humanly possible so that we can have another parade. We'll be back this week. Like we said, we've been talking draft nonstop, so we wanted to break it up here with the Hurts extension. But drafts are important now. Drafts are always important. We'll have mock drafts, player breakdowns, all coming up leading up to our live stream on draft night. We'll talk to you then. Subscribe to the Birds vs. Boys YouTube. More and more Hurts talk for about now until 2028 on our channel. We'll talk to you then.